This documentary covers every major category of weapon used during the Korean War. The conflict lasted from 1950 to 1953 and involved forces from multiple nations. Weapons ranged from World War II designs to early Cold War systems. The list follows strict chronological and technological progression. Early infantry weapons, 1945 to 1950. The majority of infantry weapons came from World War II stockpiles. Both sides relied on proven, mass-produced firearms. Reliability was prioritized over innovation. The M1 Garand served as the primary rifle for United Nations forces. It fired .30-06 ammunition and used an 8-round en-bloc clip. It provided semi-automatic fire superiority over bolt-action rifles. The M1 carbine was issued to support troops and officers. It was lightweight and fired a smaller caliber cartridge. It was effective at short ranges. The M1903 Springfield remained in limited service. It was used mainly by snipers and rear units. Its accuracy was well established. The Thompson submachine gun was widely deployed early in the war. It fired .45 ACP ammunition. Its weight limited long patrol use. The M3 grease gun gradually replaced the Thompson. It was cheaper and easier to manufacture. It fired the same .45 ACP round. North Korean forces used the Mosin Nagant rifle. It was a bolt-action rifle firing 7.62 by 54 mmR ammunition. Large quantities were supplied by the Soviet Union. The PPSH-41 submachine gun was widely used by communist forces. It fired 7.62 by 25 ammunition. Its high rate of fire was effective in close combat. Machine guns. The Browning 1919 was the standard medium machine gun for UN forces. It was air-cooled and belt-fed. It provided sustained suppressive fire. The Browning M2 50 caliber was used against vehicles and aircraft. It was mounted on vehicles and defensive positions. Its range and power were unmatched. Communist forces relied on the DP-27 light machine gun. It used a pan magazine and fired rifle-caliber ammunition. It was simple but slower to reload. The SG-43 Goryanov machine gun replaced older Soviet models. It offered improved sustained fire capability. It was commonly used in defensive roles. Anti-infantry explosives. Fragmentation grenades were standard on all sides. Most designs inherited from World War II stockpiles. They were used for trench and bunker clearing. The Mk2 fragmentation grenade was common among UN troops. It featured a cast iron body. Its fragmentation pattern was predictable. Soviet-designed stick grenades were used by communist forces. They were simple and inexpensive. They required accurate throwing. Anti-tank infantry weapons. Early in the war, infantry anti-tank weapons were limited. Most tanks were vulnerable only at close range. The Mk1A1 bazooka was the primary early anti-tank weapon for UN forces. It was effective against light armor. It struggled against heavier tanks. The improved M20 Super Bazooka entered service later. It fired a larger 3.5-inch rocket. It could penetrate Soviet-built tanks. Communist forces used the RPG-2 late in the war. It was simple and reusable. Its range was limited. Artillery weapons. Artillery played a decisive role throughout the conflict. Most guns were towed and World War II-era designs. The 105mm M101 howitzer was the most common UN artillery piece. It provided reliable indirect fire support. It was highly mobile. The 155mm M114 howitzer delivered heavier firepower. It was used for counter-battery fire. Its range exceeded smaller guns. Communist forces used the 122mm M30 howitzer. It was effective and durable. It supported large infantry formations. The 152mm ML20 provided heavy artillery support. It was slower to deploy. Its firepower was substantial. Armored vehicles. Early tank combat relied heavily on World War II designs. Mobility and logistics were critical. The M4 Sherman was used extensively early in the war. It was reliable and easy to maintain. It was outmatched by newer enemy tanks. The M26 Pershing introduced heavier armor and firepower. It mounted a 90mm gun. It improved tank survivability. The M46 Patton became the primary UN tank. It featured improved mobility and fire control. It was effective against enemy armor. Communist forces relied heavily on the T-34-85. It combined firepower, armor, and mobility. It dominated early armored engagements. Naval weapons. Naval forces supported coastal and amphibious operations. Most ships were armed with conventional naval guns. Destroyers used 5-inch naval guns for shore bombardment. They targeted supply routes and troop concentrations. Accuracy improved with forward observers. Aircraft carriers deployed naval aircraft for strike missions. Their defensive weapons included anti-aircraft guns. They protected fleets from air attack. Early jet and aircraft weapons. The Korean War marked the first large-scale jet combat. Aircraft weapons evolved rapidly during the conflict. The F-80 Shooting Star was the first jet used by UN forces. It was initially used for air superiority. It later shifted to ground attack. The F-86 Sabre became the primary UN fighter. It was armed with .50 caliber machine guns. It engaged enemy jets effectively. Communist forces deployed the MiG-15. It was armed with cannons rather than machine guns. It challenged UN air dominance. Propeller aircraft remained in heavy use. They were effective for close air support. The P-51 Mustang was widely used for ground attack. It carried rockets and bombs. It was vulnerable to ground fire. Aircraft ordnance. Aircraft carried unguided bombs and rockets. Precision-guided weapons did not yet exist. General-purpose bombs were used against infrastructure. Napalm was widely deployed for area denial. Its use reshaped battlefield tactics. Unguided rockets were mounted on fighter bombers. They targeted vehicles and troop positions. Accuracy depended on pilot skill. Anti-aircraft weapons. Both sides used ground-based air defenses. These weapons targeted low-flying aircraft. The 40mm Bofors gun was widely used by UN forces. It was effective against propeller aircraft. It remained in service after the war. Communist forces relied on 37mm and 85mm anti-aircraft guns. They created dense air defense zones. They forced higher altitude bombing. Late war developments, 1952 to 1953. Weapons systems became more specialized as the war progressed. Logistics and maintenance gained importance. Improved communications enhanced artillery coordination. Radar-assisted targeting became more common. Night operations increased. Early electronic warfare techniques were introduced. They focused on jamming and interception. Their impact was limited but significant. Post-war and modern legacy. The Korean War influenced Cold War weapons development. Lessons shaped future infantry and armor designs. Jet combat doctrine evolved rapidly. Tank armor and anti-tank weapons improved worldwide. Combined arms warfare became standard. Many weapons used in Korea remained in service for decades. Others led directly to modern systems. The conflict marked the transition to modern warfare.